Good evening, everyone, or I should say good night to those and good morning to others. I hope that you guys are well. I hope that you all had a wonderful week. You know what? I'm going to go without the glasses because I'm going to talk to you guys. And it's late. Most things don't shock me the way that this shocked me. Most things don't make me angry or get they don't get some type of emotion from me. I'm pretty even keel when good times, bad times. But before I even get into the recap tonight and the topic, tonight's topic, skin in the game, I have to tell you, I was pretty upset and pretty much in shock as to what I saw and what's going on. And I think that it was so blatant that people just weren't thinking that it was there. And they're still not thinking that it's there. And it's pretty apparent of what's going on at this point, at least in my mind. And it reaffirms my passion, my drive for our meme stocks. So tonight on the recap, we're going to cover my due diligence on skin in the game. And I'm going to lead off, before I get into the weeds here, I'm going to lead off by saying I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I am just a simple human being that is trying to make sense of the information alongside with you guys. So you guys are going to see me thinking and saying stuff as I learn it, and I'm going to share that with you. And I'm hoping that we can have this conversation. So, skin in the game, what is it? I'm going to give you the conclusion first. And then I'm going to go through the rule and to tell you why this rule is so important. So, hopefully you guys are ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. Did you guys know that? So, here before now, we've all been worried about the National Securities Clearing Corporation. We've all been worried about them. We've all been worried about the securities market, the short interest, the failed to delivers, and the naked shorts. But we had not ever looked at the options market. I don't even remember seeing or reading a post about what was going on in the options market. And that bothered me for a while. Bothered me because I tried to solve the impossible math problem. And the impossible math problem means that there are pieces of my math equation that are missing, that I've been trying to figure out. So I've been calculating and doing my part in trying to point out, various things that would come up. And it never crossed my mind because I thought that it would be too blatant and too open for it to happen. And I hope you guys, probably sitting down, but did you know that they are shorting the options market? Did you know that? I didn't know that. Did you actually know that they are all week, this week, last week, they have been shorting the options market? So not only are they shorting the regular securities market, right? So they're shorting that market and not being able to cover the short interest from just regular securities, and they're not even able to deliver on those items. But they're also shorting the options market. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. The reason why 801 is so important is because it's trying to deal with protecting us as traders and protecting the people who are on our side in this whole transaction. So 801 is so important because it deals with the options clearing corporation and how they are shoring up their coffers to be able to handle a liquidity shortfall or a loss that is really set in motion by one of their members. So when you think about, and this is important, when you think about the options market, you think about that for every one contract, there are 100 shares, right? So if they're shorting option contracts, and there's different ways to do it, and I'm going to go through that later on in this video, but I'm giving you the conclusion of the matter and why this rule was written for this purpose. The OCC understands that the options market is being shorted. Not just shorted, but shorted to freaking oblivion. Much like the securities market for our meme stocks. Well, so that is the conclusion. That is why I got upset. And you're going to see why I got upset. But this is what is going on. And this is why that D&D post that I made yesterday was so important. It is because we've all been looking at one side of the SEC's organization, but we are a corporation that is involved with making rules that govern the stock market. We've been looking at one side of it. Everybody's been focusing in on, including me, the NSCC Rule 801, the 005 rules, the 003 rule, and the 004 rule. We've all been trying to figure out and the short interest and the failed to delivers. We've all been so focusing in on where they could be what could be happening with the NSCC and on the regular trading floor and market, but we had not really looked at the options market, and we did not understand, and we didn't see it because it really wasn't apparent to us that the OCC, the Options Clearing Commission, set in motion 3 separate rules, one of which we were going to cover tonight, which is the 801 rule. The other 2 are going to come out from a few teammates of mine, so stay tuned. But the 801 rule was set in motion because the OCC could see what was going on and what was going to happen. So I'm going to go through the 801 rule now, but I gave you the crux of the matter as to why this was passed and why this is so important. Now you think that the SI should be a whole lot bigger on the security side if I'm shorting 100 shares per contract. Unless it's a covered contract. Well, we're going to talk about that. But that is why I am still excited. That is why I'm still adamant that our meme stocks will survive. That is why I have not lost my faith in any of these stocks, because they are caught red-handed, and I've pretty much been able to tell this week that that's what they're doing. There are different tools that you can use, and I'll try to post that below, or either here or on Twitter or on Reddit. But that is what is going on, and people are not aware of it. Our options buyers are not aware of it, because they're switching up their tactics. I told you, the more they switch it up, the better we get and the smarter we become. So let me get through this rule, and then, but that is the conclusion of the matter. This is why we're here. This is why I read the rule, and why I went back and did all of the due diligence, trying to understand the intricacies of how this plays out and how this kind of comes together this way. So now let us go through what it means to have skin in the game, and I will go through kind of what the rule is, what the rule was, I should say, the changes that are being made, the strategies that are being used, and how to spot them, So we're going to go through that. Now that I've given you the conclusion up front, we're going to go through each one of these categories, and it may just be I may do a 2-part video set, but I want to make sure that you guys understood that concept first. That we're going to talk about what the rule was, really, and how it came to be, what the changes are, the strategies that hedge funds that they use, are lovely hedge funds and market makers use, and followed by kind of tying it up together, right? So it's all about tying it together at this point and making connections and synopsis. So without further ado, let's get started. So the 801 rule was, I will start this from 2020 and then come back. Last year, a lot of things happened. And last year, the OCC started talking, really got in talks about what needed to kind of be changed as they saw things happening in the options market. Mainly that they started doing things that they should not have been doing in the options market. And our overseas counterparts saw that, and they said, well, hey, you guys need to work on shoring up what you have, just in case something happens, a triggering event happens. And we'll go through what the triggering events could be, but you guys, they basically told the OCC that you need to do something about this. And really, this is how the skin in the game came about, because we were forced by our overseas counterparts to say something. They saw something, they said something, and then they recommended things for us to be able to do. And what they came up with was the skin in the game. And trying to figure out, and there was a lot of debate, a lot of talks going on, right? So they're trying to figure out how to kind of frame this rule, how to kind of work it out. And in February of this year, they finally put everything down on paper. And the 801 rule was mainly to establish a persistent minimum corporate contribution. Now, mind you, this was done so that they could be able to cover losses and liquidity shortfalls, aka your skin in the game. If you haven't figured it out, it's about the OCC trying to cover their own tails and remain protected. This is what this whole rule is about. Quite like the supplemental liquidity deposit from the NSCC, this is the OCC covering its tail, its behind, because it knows it's exposed. So, they want to make sure they have enough of a minimum corporate contribution amount to cover liquidity shortfalls and losses, right? So that's the broad stroke of the rule. The changes that are being made are the following, and there are 4 of them. They're changing the definition to the management policy. They're changing the clearing fund methodology policy, and we'll go through that. This is important. The recovery and orderly wind down, as well as the waterfall. And I'm just going to say this once, and I'm going to say it very quickly. For the waterfall rules, order matters. Order matters because it deals with how they are going to cover their losses, how each layer is going to try to bring the negative balance all the way up from the loss or the liquidity shortfall all the way back up to zero, to net, right? So you've overspent and overdrafted your account. You got to add more money to make it balance out to zero. That's all that it is. But order matters, kind of like the algebraic term PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. It matters. It deals with how you solve the equation. So, how did the rule originally deal with this? And why did our counterparts want us to change it? Want us to increase it to what their levels were? So overseas, they have the minimum corporate requirement is 25%, is 125%. Whereas over here in the U.S., before this rule passed, we only had 110%. And the OCC really captured that, held in their restricted cash account. I call it restricted cash because it's only supposed to be used for that purpose, and restricted cash basically means that it has to be held for a specific purpose, unlike unrestricted cash that can be used for everything under the sun for businesses. So over here, the OCC only had 110% of its liquid net asset fund balance equity available. Now, they call that acronym the LNAFBE. And why is that? Because without getting into the weeds of it, you're going to take your most liquid assets, your cash equivalents, things that can be easily, and other items on the balance sheet that can be easily transferable to cash. They can easily convert to cash, less any liabilities and other adjustments that have to get paid out. So they had 110% of whatever that total was saved in a reserve account, just in case, something happened, just in case something, a triggering event occurred that would cause a member of their, a member that they had, that would cause one of their members to default, basically. So if they couldn't come through on a promise and they acted in bad faith, we're all talking about bad faith these days, and they acted in bad faith, that is why this is so important, right? So, sorry. And they are doing that, right? So they're trying to help make sure that they got enough to kind of back up and shore up their members and to protect us at the same time. So why is that? Why now? Why are they trying to sound this alarm off right now? They had this one rule that they were supposed to have 110% of their assets kind of there to protect us. Well, what is setting off this rule now, and why are the changes being made? Well, the alarms are going off. You see, the whole point of putting this rule into place last year was to establish the capital, what they called the capital management policy. And that policy was supposed to sound the alarm when three things happened. Number one, that if they didn't have the amount, here are the things that would sound the alarm off. They didn't have enough equity to satisfy the market and public interest. So they had to have enough equity to satisfy that. And if not, that's your first alarm bell at the OCC. The second one is that they were monitoring both equity and the liquid net asset fund balance equity. So if they didn't have enough of that to cover, something was going to go up. Something was going to be was going to happen. Something was needed to be changed, I would say. And the third and final thing was that how they managed to adjust the fee schedule as well as establish a plan should things go south. And this is where we are right now. The alarm bells are sounding off. They have overshorted the options market, and the OCC is saying our alarms are going off. We got to do something about it. This was in February. They're saying we got to do something about it. Something's got to change. It can't just be this same thing, same way, all of the time. That is why this rule was written. It was written to help the OCC sound the alarm bells for everybody else, to let them know something was up and something needed to be changed and something needed to happen quite effectively and immediately. And they knew this was going to happen. And I have yet to post my origins video, but it is coming probably shortly after this, where I go through kind of how we led to the January 28th, 27th, 28th mini squeeze. That's a good one too. So we know what the rule was, what it was. So how did they, under the old rule, how would they cover? And you remember when I started talking about waterfalls, right? I talked about how order matters, and the reason why order matters, and I'm going to explain it to you now. Now that you know what the rule, what the rule was, why it's enforced, and how it was executed. It rolled out the waterfall rules that basically said that you're going to take your losses and you're going to add back margin. So let's say our losses are here, and I'm going to add back margin. I'm going to add back my clearing fund contribution, which is really important and why you need to pay attention. I'm going to add back my excess capital from the OCC. That's my LNAFBE. That's my liquid net asset fund balance equity. Then I'm going to add in the clearing fund contributions from non-members, as well as what they call the executive deferred compensation plan. This is how they were going to cover everything should a member default, prior to the SEC making the SROCC 2021-801 rule that important. Right? So this is what has happened. This is what has taken place. Fast forward. Let's talk about the changes. From now you know what it was, now you know what it's about to be. This is important. So we're migrating. I'm explaining, giving you the background. I'm going to give you the changes. I'm going to tell you strategies next, and it'll all loop back into my original statement, which was that they are shorting the options market right under our noses. The 4 rule changes are, as I mentioned before, changing the definition. The first of the 4 rule changes are changing the definition of the minimum corporate contribution, or really defining the minimum contribution amount. So the minimum corporate contribution amount was supposed to, and is going to, tell this OCC that they have to maintain a minimum a persistent minimum amount of equity on their books, right? They have to have this particular amount of equity. There's no the minimum corporate contribution here. They gotta have it. And this definition of changing this policy, the changing the definition in this policy, virtually allowed the OCC to increase from 110% to 125% of its own target capital. What were we saying was the target capital amount? Well, they want to have and they want to have 125%. Well, they've now added an additional 15% because of the changing the makeup of the rule. And the minimum corporate contribution is what that is. They are adding that in there to get to that 125%. So you have your LNAFBE rule, and you also have the corporate minimum required amount. This persistent minimum, right? So this is for the persistent minimum. Second rule change. All right. So the second rule that we're going to talk about is revising the OCC's waterfall rules. Now, I'm going to explain to you one component of the waterfall rule that I find very, very important, and one that we all pretty much need to watch out for, because these are the triggering events that basically push this rule into effect. So I'm going to read it to you so that way you know, and hopefully you guys will pick up on the trigger words that I say. So this is rule 1006, and it's within the OCC rules and handbook. Basically, they, like the NSCC, have their own guidebook as to how they operate, what they do, and the rules that they have announced throughout the ages. So I'm going to go through this rule with you. And it's Rule 106, Part A, Subpart A. And it explains how the clearing funds are used. And what I'm picking up on is what some of the triggering events could be to be able to cause these funds to be used. All right? So here we go. The first one. The clearing fund may also be used to make good losses or expenses suffered by the corporation or losses suffered by the clearing fund as a result of, it can be from borrowings, as a result of a failure of any clearing member to discharge duly any obligation or on or arising from any confirmed trade by the corporation. Failed to deliver. As a result of the failure of any clearing member or of the CDS to perform its obligations under or arising from any exercised or assigned option contract or matured future or any other contract or obligation issued, undertaken, or guaranteed by the corporation, or in respect of which the corporation is otherwise liable. As a result of the failure of any clearing member to perform any of its obligations in respect of the stock loan and borrow positions of such clearing member. What happens when we borrow, when hedge funds and market makers borrow stock? They have to pay it back, right? But if they can't pay it back and they can't find the borrowing amount, this is why these rules are important. This is why it takes a bit to kind of get through them, but we're gonna get through them together. So we got SI, We know short interest is involved. We know fail to delivers are involved. We know that they are not, exercising their, basically using their good faith to execute these deals, right? Act in bad faith, that's when you get caught. All right. So then the next one is failure of any clearing member to make any other required payment or render any other required performance. And last but not least, my personal favorite, as a result of the failure of any bank, securities, or commodities clearing organizations to perform its obligation to the corporation. The corporation here, I'm assuming, is the OCC. And those are the triggering events. What we just read are the triggering events that cause the 801, that really cause the use of the clearing fund, which then spurs the waterfall rules, which we're about to go through, which then also spurs on why the 801 rule is really in place, and why the alarm bells are going off and sounding off for people. But I think that we've become so oblivious to, we're not paying attention to that part, but we're also focused in on 100% just the regular securities. So how does the waterfall rule change? Well, what they've done is they've gone and changed the order of how the losses or how the liquidity shortfalls are done. They still have losses on top, then it's the margin, then it's the clearing fund, right? Then it's the minimum required capital contribution, really corporate contribution. Then after that, it's the LNAFBE, which is the liquid net asset fund balance equity. That should be at 110%. So it's that 110% plus the minimum required distribution amount to get us to our 125. Then it's whatever is left, right? Whatever is left after you deduct or add back all of those things. Then you take that residual amount and you add back the clearing fund from the non-member at the OCC, and then you add back the executive deferred compensation plan amounts. And hopefully, they hope that this will net out to zero. And that's it. That is what we are seeing. This is what is going on here. What's the third rule? Third thing that changed. Well, it's how the liquid net asset fund balances are calculated. That's important. We got to know where these numbers are coming from in order to figure out, okay, do they have enough to cover, right? So, as a general rule, the LNAFBE are calculated by taking basics. I'm just going to cover basics. As I did before, it's just your assets minus your liabilities is equal to your equity. They're taking really easily convertible assets and basically converting them to cash, and then lessing out any liabilities or adjustments. This is the equivalent to what we would call in accounting working capital. Do you have enough working capital to cover your short-term obligations, right? That's what it is. But then that number, depending upon what time of the year you take it, or what month you take it, or what quarter you take it, can always change and be different. This is why it gets recorded, and why it continues to change. It's a continually changing number. If you record a number, the reason why is that if you record a number at the end of the year, you're using prior year balances. Whereas if the event happens in January, you start to get different varying numbers. Or if the event happens in February, you have to, if the event happens in February, but you're using last year's numbers, those are not going to help you to shore up your coffers because presumably the numbers have changed. So what they've gone to doing is that if it happens during the year, they're going to look back 1 month and look forward 1 month. They're not going to look at the month in which the incident happened. They're going to look at when the incident, what took place before the incident, the month prior, and then the month after, to figure out if they have enough. Now, if they have enough kind of shored up in their coffers at that point in time. This leads into the fourth rule that basically says that when this triggering event happens, the OCC has another 270 days to replenish this 10%, this amount back into its coffers, so that way it can cover something else that may happen, right? And every time it triggers one of the rules in the 1006 rules, you add, and another 270 days are now tacked right on top of that. So tacking in tax are just adding on top of one of the other. So you kind of you keep adding on more days because you are going through something different, and that it doesn't reset the clock. It just kind of adds more to it, and that was my understanding. And I may come back and change and tweak that, but that's how I read the rule. So why should I be concerned about all of this? Well, I talked to you earlier about, and I've been mentioning it, they're shorting the options market. They're shorting the options market. So we're going to talk about the strategies that they're using. We're going to talk about, the different options that are out there, and then the strategies they're using to short the market. And I'm trying to make this connection with you guys as I'm going along. So hopefully you guys are starting to get why this is important. And I'm also going to go through the major indicator that kind of led me to this, which is what we're going to talk about now. And that's going to move us right on into our strategy. So I'm not sure how many of you guys have actually studied options and have looked at what they call the Greeks. It involves theta, delta, gamma, and vega. And all three of these things are measurements of risk. But for the sake of this video, we're going to talk about the theta. Theta, as we know, is the time decay of an option. It is the rate of change between the option price and time. So just marinate on that. It is the rate of change between the option price and the time. As a general rule, long calls and puts have and will always have, or how can I say this in a better way? As a general rule, strategies hedge funds and market makers use to short us that kind of coincide with theta are long calls and puts will always have a negative theta, whereas short calls and puts will also have a positive theta. When an option contract has zero theta, that means that there is no decay, no time decay of the option. It means that the option is perfectly fine, and that it's not going to change, fluctuate as much as the other ones will, or it's not going to lose its value. I should say that's a better word. So let's go through definitions, right? So what is a call option? And I'm trying to lead you to the water. So what is a call option? Well, a call option is a contract between the buyer, who is the option holder, and the seller, who is the option writer. This gives the holder the right to buy but not the obligation to buy the shares of the underlying security at the agreed upon price point. Okay? Keep that in mind. So, I'm going to pause right here, and we're going to talk about why I just mentioned calls. I'm getting ready to go through the strategy hedge funds use. As you can see, I'm pretty tired. It's been quite a long day, and I'm gonna have another long day tomorrow. But I digress. It's the nature of the beast. So we're gonna talk about the strategy hedge funds use to be able to short the stock using calls. Then we'll go through the put strategy a little bit later. So one strategy, the long call strategy, means that you or me, right? You or I, if I'm talking to you, will buy the option and assume the role. So remember, if it's a long call, it'll be negative. If it's a short call, it'll be positive. If it's a long put, it'll be negative. If it's a short put, it's also positive. These are strategies that hedge firms use to pretty much short the stock. So, as I was saying, the long call strategy means that you and I will buy the option and assume the role of you or me. We will buy the option and assume the role of the buyer. And it essentially allows us to buy the stock at the strike price, right? And so when we do that, when we buy this long call strategy, we are essentially being very bullish on the stock. We want the stock to go up. That's where we're in the bulls. We run every day with the bulls as being part of these meme stocks, and we make sure that we hold these options for pretty much of a bit because we know that the stock is going to rise. The short call strategy that they use. So remember, the short calls have a positive theta. Start looking for that in the options market. When you see a positive theta in the options market for calls, it could be a short call option. And what this means is that you have now, or I'll use me, I have now become the seller in this transaction, and I am selling something that I do not own. Huh? Let me repeat that. The role has been reversed. Instead of trying to buy the stock, I am now selling the stock. And I don't even own it yet. How does that benefit me? I get the money right away to my account. I don't have to wait for it. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to say anything for it. The money is there as soon as the deal closes. The biggest risk with a short call are naked shorts or naked call options. You guys getting it now? Oh, man. So, I'm going to take you through it. This is important to understand this because if the call option is higher than the strike price at the expiration date. So, all of these options, they have an expiration date. We see that on, our trading platforms. Then it's the in the money and the option is then deemed to be the only way to get out of, I should say, a short call strategy is if hedge funds will only make money and market makers will only make money if the price of the stock goes up underneath the call option, meaning that they have now sold the option at a higher price, and the price of the option then kind of goes all the way, just tanks. How they lose is when the price goes back up. And that can go from 0 to 100 real quick. There's no, trying to save it, trying to buffer it. That's how you know. That's how you kill a short call. And I would just leave it at that. I'm just gonna leave it at that. That's how you kill that. What other strategies do they use? And I'm not even gonna lie, I do have notes, and I'm making sure that I'm covering my points because I want you guys to understand why this is important. They use long puts, covered calls, and what they call a bear call spread. Now, I'm going to go through some of these strategies, but I want you guys to pay attention that the most important thing to look out here for, what does a long put have? Negative theta. What does a short call have? Positive theta. How does it correlate to what we're going through right now? They're shorting the options market through short calls, covered calls, long puts, bear call spreads, and many, many more. The reason why this 801 rule passed was because they saw this, and they know they're in trouble. So how does this all continue to affect us? Let's go to the next rule. Covered calls. So that we just covered long puts, now we're going to talk about covered calls. I'm almost done. We've only got 2 more strategies, and then I'm going to try to tie it all together for you. This will be a 2-part video, and I may just make it one video, but we shall see. So let's talk about covered calls. Covered calls are a popular option strategy, and it's really used by investors who think that the stock will not change. The stock won't change in the near term. I wonder what type of strategy do we see where the stock value doesn't change in the near term and it just keeps circling the same number over and over and over and over again. It never moves the needle. We don't get anywhere with this stock. Constructed by, and how is a cover call constructed? I'm just gonna leave that there. It's my opinion that this is how they're keeping us trading sideways, is that they're using covered calls. How is a covered call constructed? Well, they're basically holding the option or holding shares in a long-term position. Then they are also selling the shares short, thereby netting the two, right? Because they have the shares to be able to cover the spread. They have it, and the way that the short calls work is that they don't have the shares first. They have to go back into the system, hoping that the shares fall in price and in nature, and then they will buy it back at the cheaper price and then claim the difference on the spread between what they sold it for and then what they bought it back at in order to cover. Here, they already have a long position, and now they're selling the share short, so now they don't have to go into the market if the stock falls. They can just keep the money from the short sale, and whenever the time comes, if the option continues to drop, they keep the money, and if it goes up, well, they have enough shares to be able to cover that at that price point. This is kind of hedging their own risk, so to speak. If you didn't know it, so it basically gives them the right to do this at any point in time within the market. How is this executed? Well, a covered call writer will sell his right. So they sell their right for cash So we talk about transactions and agreement. So this person A sells their right to person B in exchange for cash. And the buyer of the options gets the right to own your person B gets the right to own person A's shares on or before the expiration date, right? They're still going to get the cash immediately. Person A is going to still get cash immediately, but person A is saying that, I can sell these options short. I don't think that these options are going to be worth anything in the next kind of week or so here. I can sell them now and then buy them back at a later point in time. That is what they're saying. Whereas the B person is like, la 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 la, I'm going to buy these options. This is just going to be a solo YOLO moment, and then I'm going to be super rich. Not saying that that's not happening. I'm just saying that that is pretty much kind of what they think we will do. And we're not following for that. We're too smart for that. They ain't never gonna catch us. So what are the risks involved with that? Well, essentially, this can go left on them. By left, I mean if the price point of the call that they sold, of the covered call that they sold, even though they have tried to shore up their position by making a long call, or having a long put strategy, or having a long call strategy, even if that, I'm getting sleepy. Even if that, the biggest risk in this whole thing has and will always be naked calls. So you ask me why is that? Why are they even allowed to do that? And the naked call is you're selling something you don't own. So if they're not just doing cover calls, it's one thing to do a cover call and to trade sideways, but if you're just doing blatant shorting of the market, shorting of the options market, and you're just shorting call options, you're selling stuff you don't own, and that's fraud. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. So, but this is what I'm reading. This is how I'm connecting the dots for you, with us, with all of you right now. The last option, before I kind of tie this all back together again, is the bear call spread. And the goal here is to profit from the neutral to bearish positions. And it involves one short call with a low strike price and one long call with a higher strike price. And the two seem to net themselves out. Okay. So why did I mention these strategies? It came to my attention yesterday and the day before yesterday that this was going on, and I didn't want to share it with you all until I had done quite a bit of research on this. And these methodologies are active in our everyday market. They are active with GME, active with Tesla, active with AMC, active with Ocugen, and they're active with so many other stocks on the market right now. So you see why I was very shocked and angry, because the information, I was looking right at it, but I never put all of that together. So let's tie it up, wrap it up into a nice pretty bow. The 801 rule was written because the OCC, it was written and passed because the OCC knows they are headed for what clearly seems to be member account defaults. How much? I don't know. When it will happen, I don't know. Do I know it's going to happen? Oh, you bet your bottom dollar I do. They are currently trying to protect themselves, to protect us, to protect other market participants from these organizations who have acted in complete bad faith on the marketplace. These are the quote unquote bad actors that we've always talked about. So that is why this rule was so important to be written. This was more so written to sound the alarm and to help people understand, hey, wake up. Something's going on. You need to look at it. Don't ignore me. Don't not call me back, not post anything, not say anything to me. You need to see this, because this is what's happening. And at this point, many of the major, hedge and brokerage funds have started to talk about this. I know I've talked to my broker about it. I've talked to some of my own friends about it, and just trying to understand and get a better understanding of it. And this is what's kind of going on. This is the trend. So you ask me how I know that they haven't covered. This is how I know. And I know this. You guys probably going to be like, no, it's not true. But earlier in the week, they bought a ton of put options. And the put options that I saw were all negative. They also borrowed more ETF shares at the beginning of the week. What will they do now? This is the whole point of why taking the time to read and then to connect the rules to what's happening out in the real world and the market is so important. And I hope that you guys understood that. I hope that you really take from this video what the purpose of this rule is, why it is, why I'm so adamant about it, and why I'm kind of a little bit upset as to why this happened without me knowing about it firsthand. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night. It's a little bit after it's a little bit after midnight California time, but I did not want to let the night go by without having something posted in regards to the skin in the game, D&D. So enjoy, have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon. And if you have questions, feel free to ask me on Twitter. My link is below. You can also check out my Reddit handle, which is also below the video too. If you did like what you saw, please subscribe. I'm going to try to send in more videos as much as I can. I'm brand new to this. Didn't really intend to start a YouTube channel, but was encouraged by a lot of people to kind of get this information out there so you guys can see my face and know that I'm an actual person who's actually trying to help you. All right. Night, everybody. Take care.